Welcome back. In this video, we'll present a hypothetical assessment to highlight some of the inconsistencies in current grading practices.
On the next slide, we'll show you a hypothetical assessment that is not specific to any subject area, and we'll be asking you to think about how you would score it and turn it into a grade based on how the student did on each section. This is a hypothetical assessment. This assessment is not discipline specific. Listen as I read about the 3 different sections of this assessment. In section 1, described in the green box, there were 10 items or questions that required recall of important but simpler content that had been explicitly taught. The student got all of these correct. In section 2, described in the yellow box, there were 4 items or questions that asked for application of complex content and that was explicitly taught and applied in situations similar to what was taught. The student got 2 out of 4 correct. And in section 3, described in the pink box, there were 2 items or questions that asked for application in novel situations that went beyond what was explicitly taught. This student got none of these correct. What numerical score does the student earn on this assessment? What letter grade does the student earn on this assessment? Now, think about how you would score this student's assessment, given the description of each section and how many questions the student got correct in those sections. We want you to assign a numerical score and convert that numerical score to a letter grade. You'll input this information into a Google form at the address on the slide, or you can click the link in the Canvas module. Please pause the video and do so now.
When we've presented this hypothetical scenario in the past, the results you see on the screen are typical of how teachers scored the assessment. Numerical scores fell anywhere between 100 and 40, with most falling in the 60 to 79 range, and those numerical scores translated to letter grades anywhere from A to F, with the most common letter grade being a C. What do these results reveal about objectivity, consistency, and methodology? As you can see, this hypothetical assessment reveals that grading can be a very subjective endeavor. The grade that the student received depended much more on the teacher who graded it than it did on the student's performance. It also reveals a lack of consistency. Without agreements about what grades mean, we won't be able to reproduce the same grading results consistently, even when given the same student performance. Methodology is all about how we grade. What content, skills, and kinds of questions are more important than others? How do we weight each question? Without some coherence around these grading practices and decisions, student scores will be all over the map. When grading this hypothetical assessment, teachers had to make many different scoring decisions when assigning points and a letter grade. For example, they had to think about the complexity of the questions. Section A asked students to recall important but simple content, whereas Section C asked students to apply what they had learned in a new way, very different levels of complexity. How many questions did the student get correct? In Section A, the recall section, she got all 10 questions correct. In Section B, where she was asked to apply her knowledge and skills, she got 2 of the 4 questions correct. In Section C, she got neither of the 2 questions correct. How do we weight each section or question? Is each question worth the same number of points? Why or why not? Are some questions considered bonuses or extra credit? Why? There was some language about content that was explicitly taught versus not. How does that factor into your grading of those questions? And finally, what grading scale are you using? Is a numerical score of 50 on your grading scale the same letter grade as a numerical score of 50 on a colleague's grading scale? How do you convert a numerical score to a letter grade? For this exercise, you obviously were making all of these decisions on your own, but collaborating with your department or course-alike teachers about these methods will be essential in establishing coherent grading practices that are fair to all students.
As we wrap up this video, remember these overarching takeaways. Number one, grading can be a very subjective endeavor. Without grading agreements, there are often inconsistencies between teachers grading the same assessment. Number two, there needs to be coherence and methodology to ensure accurate grades. You are now ready to move on to video 3.